This is the longest-serving Empress Dowager in Chinese history. Born into Mongol nobility, she entered the Qing court with the backing of a powerful political matriarch, yet she still came dangerously close to losing her empress title and being driven out of the palace. Widowed early, she didn't claim peace. She fought her way through court storms. So, who was this woman so unbreakable that she could stand tall when everything around her was falling apart?
Xiaodong Mausoleum sits inside the Eastern Qing Tombs, about 500 meters northeast of Qing Xiaoling, the mausoleum of the dynasty's first ruler of all China, Fuling the Shunzhi Emperor. This is the internal resting place of his empress, the Borjigit noblewoman Alatan Qiqige, better known by her posthumous title Empress Xiaohuizhang. Completed in 1693, this magnificent empress tomb is remembered as the first fully independent, officially established empress mausoleum of the Ming Qing era. In the previous episode, we met one of the most formidable political women in Chinese history, Empress Dowager Xiaozhuang, and the story of her mausoleum, Zhaoxi. Xiaozhuang was a member of the Borjigit clan of the Khorchin Mongols, a family that traced its prestige back to the same golden lineage associated with Genghis Khan. Empress Xiaohuizhang was Xiaozhuang's great niece. Her grandfather, Cha Han, was Xiaozhuang's own older brother. Empress Xiaohuizhang was born in 1641. By that time, the Qing Empire was still young, and it had already forged a tight political alliance with Khorchin through Manchu-Mongol marriage politics. Then, in Shunzhi year 11, 1654, to strengthen the Khorchin's influence, Xiaozhuang recommended her great niece to her son, the Shunzhi Emperor Fuling, as his empress. Southeast of Qing Xiaoling Mausoleum, the Shunzhi Emperor's Mausoleum, there stands a magnificent 5-arc stone bridge. The spirit path that extends from this bridge leads straight toward the Emperor's own tomb, Xiaodong Mausoleum. Right in front of the Xiaodong Mausoleum Prince Gate, there is another bridge, a 3-arc stone bridge. At an emperor's mausoleum, we usually see 3 of these 3-arc bridges lined up, so the difference in number here isn't random. It reflects strict hierarchical ritual order. In Imperial China, the stone bridge was reserved for the emperor's coffin procession. As for the people who came to perform sacrifices, imperial women, princes, and nobles, and the ordinary attendants and laborers, they could only cross by the bridge we are looking at now, the 9-span flight stone bridge. Not long after she entered the palace, a woman appeared, someone who would truly shake her position as empress. In Shunzhi year 1656, Consort Donge was promoted to Imperial Noble Consort, a rank second only to the Empress. The Shunzhi Emperor was deeply in love with her. She was known for her refinement and for mastering both Manchu and Han literature and the arts. But the Empress came from the Mongolian steppe, and she was not as fluent in court culture. Slowly, she was pushed to the side. Then, in the winter of 1657, Empress Dowager Xiaozhuang fell seriously ill. The Imperial Noble Consort Donge and the Emperor himself stayed at her bedside, caring for her until she recovered. The Empress Xiaohuizhang did not take part, whether because she was young, unfamiliar with palace ritual, or simply unsure of her place. She never entered the Empress Dowager's quarters to pay respects or help her with the care. Shunzhi was furious. He even threatened to strip her of her position as empress. But Xiaohuizhang was still Xiaozhuang's great niece. Xiaozhuang personally stepped in, and that intervention saved her. Otherwise, she might very well have been sent back to the Mongolian grasslands. After this crisis, Xiaohuizhang became noticeably more cautious.
The approach to Xiaodong Mausoleum follows almost the same ritual blueprint of an Empress tomb. Right in front of the gate of Longen, you will find the area where offerings were prepared, especially the kinds of foods associated with Manchu court tradition. The east side rooms were mainly used to prepare milk tea, fresh milk, and seasonal fruit. The west side rooms focused on Manchu-style pastries, known in Chinese as bobo. Among these treats, the most famous is sachma, a fried syrupy pastry with a sweet, crisp bite, still widely loved across Chinese communities today. Behind the east and west side rooms, there were also guard quarters for 8 banners soldiers on duty. And today, because this site is a part of a UNESCO World Heritage Property, those very same rooms are still in use by modern security guards.
Just south of the east side rooms stands the Divine Kitchen, Shenchuku,
part of which is now visibly damaged. This was the official royal kitchen space, a system inherited from the Ming Dynasty, used primarily to prepare ritual meat offerings, especially beef and mutton, for ancestral sacrifices.
Just behind the east and west side rooms stands the Longen Gate. This gate is 5 bays wide, exactly the same as the Emperor's Longen Gate. Passing through it means we are about to enter the ceremony sacrificial area. In 1661, the Shunzhi Emperor died of smallpox at just 23 years old, and Consort Donge, the woman whose rise had once nearly shaken Xiaohuizhang's position, had already passed away before him. The throne then went to Shunzhi's young son, Aixinjulo Xuanye, the future Kangxi Emperor. Following court protocol, the new emperor honored both his birth mother of the Tong clan and Xiaohuizhang with the title of Empress Dowager. But Kangxi's birth mother did not live long. In Chinese, people would say she was not blessed with a long fate. And just like that, the inner court was left with only 2 towering figures, Empress Dowager Xiaohuizhang and her grand aunt Empress Dowager Xiaozhuang. Together they supported and guided the child emperor, becoming his strongest pillars inside the palace.
At the center of the sacrificial counting yard beyond the gate of Longen stands the Hall of Longen, the main space where daily memorial rites were performed.
Inside the Longen Hall, the central spirit tablet belongs to Empress Dowager Xiaohuizhang, but on both sides there are 14 more spirit tablets each, 28 consorts in total. Wait, 28 other women also have their tablets here? Don't worry, in a moment, I will explain exactly why this happened. To the east of the main hall is the east side hall, when the Hall of Longen underwent repairs. This building served as a temporary place to ensuring spirit tablets of all, so the Empress and 28 other consorts would not be disturbed. It also functioned as a storage space for certain ritual items that would later be burned during ceremonies. To the west is the west side hall, a space used by Tibetan Lamas from the Imperial Lama temple. Here, they chanted the scriptures and performed rites to guide and deliver the souls of the deceased. In an Empress Mausoleum, the standard arrangement was typically 13 lamas assigned for these ceremonies. After she became Empress Dowager, the young Xiaohuizhang took on a new role. She helped raise members of the next generation, including the Emperor's 5th son Yingqi and the Princess Wenxian. She also repeatedly urged the emperor to reduce waste at court and lighten the burden on ordinary people, and to better serve her grand aunt Empress Dowager Xiaozhuang. She stayed close, almost never leaving her side. On January 27, 1688, her grand aunt Xiaozhuang passed away, she was so overwhelmed with grief that she nearly collapsed. She remained beside the coffin day and night, refusing food and drink until the Kangxi Emperor and the senior officials finally persuaded her to take a little nourishment. 5 years later, in 1693, Xiaohuizhang's own mausoleum was completed.
In traditional China, building a tomb in advance while the person was still alive wasn't unusual at all. But there was a deeper reason that this separate mausoleum was needed. At this time, the Qing court had already begun shifting toward full-body burial, a coffin buried intact underground. Yet Qing Xiaoling Mausoleum, the mausoleum of the Shunzhi Emperor, her husband, was still shaped by an earlier tradition that centered on cremation and urn burial. That mismatch created a practical problem. It would no longer have been appropriate to bury Xiaohuizhang, who was to be interned in a full inhumation burial inside Xiaoling. So the Qing court looked to an older precedent, the Song Dynasty, where emperors and empresses could be buried in separate mausoleums. That's why they built this independent tomb. On January 7, 1718, Empress Dowager Xiaohuizhang passed away in the Forbidden City. During her final illness, the Kangxi Emperor, despite suffering severe pain in his foot, still insisted on following both Confucian filial tradition and Manchu imperial protocol. Twice a day, morning and evening, he went to her residence to pay his respects and check on her condition. Xiaohuizhang had held the position of Empress Dowager for 57 years, the longest tenure of any Empress Dowagers in Chinese history. Behind the Hall of Longen, you pass through 3 glazed gates, a clear signal that you are now entering the true burial zone. And here we can see what makes Xiaodong Mausoleum truly unique. Yes, it has the Empress Squared City and Soul Tower, and her great burial mound, the Imperial centerpiece. But scattered across the same cage are 28 other tombs, belonging to the other consorts of the Shunzhi Emperor. These small mounds originally painted red, 28 women arranged in 2 lines, 14 on the left and 14 on the right. They were not originally buried here. They were moved from another, now abandoned consort's cemetery, combined with later Qing practices where consorts' burial mounds became much larger, often built with brick platforms beneath them. The consort's mounds at Xiaodong clearly belong to an early formative stage of the system. Each mound is relatively small, and beneath it there is no raised brick tiles. Here, each of these consorts has her own underground burial chamber beneath the mound built to hold her coffin. In May 1718, she was formally laid to rest in the underground palace beneath this tomb. Above ground rests a towering burial mound encircled by a ring of walling that invokes the feel of military fortifications. And at the very front of it stands the imposing centerpiece, the Square City and the Soul Tower. Inside the Soul Tower is a massive stone stele, an unmistakable declaration of ownership and identity. It marks the sovereignty of this mausoleum, and compared with the tall, expansive Square City and the Soul Tower of an emperor's mausoleum, the one here is clearly built on a smaller scale, unmistakably one size down in the hierarchy. The underground palace of this mausoleum was looted clean during the wave of tomb raiding that swept through this area after World War II in 1945, and the tomb was left open. It wasn't sealed again until 1952, but the disaster that followed didn't end with tomb robbers. In 1900, during the foreign military invasion linked to the Boxer Crisis and the looting that followed, Beijing's Imperial Ancestor Temple was ransacked.
The formal document recording her posthumous honors once kept inside the temple was taken. Then, incredibly, it resurfaced in 2010, listed as an auction lot at Sotheby's in Paris. For our heroine, she had already endured more than enough suffering. May she rest in peace forever. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.